Hey guys, and welcome through another one of my tutorials. I'm going to be going through and telling you a little bit about EverQuest 2. We're going to start with the archetypes, the different classes they have, from fighters to mage, to healers, and rogues. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one, read the description for them, and just give you my overall opinion of each class as I've seen it in the game and the ones that I've actually played. As you can see, I'm not new to the game. I've played this quite a bit. I have several accounts, several high-level characters, characters that are in between, and then of course I have the new character that I've made for you guys. If you've watched any of my videos, he's right here. I'm coming back and shooting these earlier videos because the sound was a little off, so I wanted to do a better job on those. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create a new level 1 character. Now you can purchase a higher level character if you feel like doing that, but for those of you who want to start off the game just like anybody else, you just go ahead and click on start another character. So now you have archetypes, and as you can see, when you click on one, it opens up several little buttons here, and these are the different classes within that archetype, like Guardian and Berserker, Monk, Bruiser, Shadow Knights, and Paladins. So I'm going to break these videos up into 4 different pieces. I'm going to do fighters first, then priest, then mage, and scout. For those of you who want a more in-depth look at what each class can offer and the descriptions of those. So if you haven't decided if you want to buy the game yet, or even just download it to play for free, you can watch these short little videos and kind of make up your mind if it sounds like something you might want to do. So let's go ahead and start with fighters. Those who seek up-close combat may find the fighter's archetype to be their liking. The fighter's archetype represents the front line of his or her party. Choose between brute strength, martial prowess, or divine power to taunt and damage your enemies. Fighters also mitigate damage to the best wearing heavy armor or high avoidance. This enables other group members to unleash their powers against mutual enemies, a vital role for dungeons. So basically it's saying you're going to be the meat shield. You're going to be the guy in the front who takes all the damage. Now it does kind of hint that you might be able to do damage yourself. Most of these classes here won't do damage. There's a few of them that kind of do a decent amount, like monks. Berserkers do a little bit, and so do bruisers. But for the main purpose of these classes is to be up in the front of the group. You're going to be the guy, for the most part, pulling. There are certain classes that are better at pulling, say monks and shadow knights, simply because they have fatigue death, which I'll get into. But for the most part, you're just going to be the meat shield. You're going to be the guy in the front, the tank, that takes all the hits, while everybody else does the damage and does the healing. So let's go ahead and pick Guardian to start with. We're going to go through each one, and I'll read the description. The Guardian is the anchor of any group of adventurers, providing leadership and protection for their allies. Combining durable armor with an impressive array of defensive skills, Guardians can remain standing after absorbing substantial amounts of physical damage from their enemies. Guardians depend on strength as their primary stat because it determines maximum power and increases damage. Now, for the most part, I'm going to agree with when it says, you know, what stat they require. They get it right with pretty much all the other classes and archetypes. I don't agree with it on this archetype because stamina actually determines how much health you have. And since you are just basically the meat shield, the tank, the amount of health you have is vital. It's the most important thing you can possibly have, other than your mitigation, which is how much damage you'll take from the creature. So those two stats will be your most important. Strength determines how much power you have and how much damage you do. You're not going to be doing massive amounts of damage compared to a scout or a mage. So those really are not important. I mean, the more damage you do, the more hate you'll keep, which is an important part of being a tank. But again, you're not going to come anywhere close to what the other guys can do. So I've seen it. I see it as more of a bonus, you know, to have high strength, but not you know, something to concentrate on. I would say more towards stamina and mitigation than anything close to strength. So that's just my opinion. You guys are more than welcome to do whatever you want on that one. But having a very high level Guardian who's rated many zones, strength is not something I even really concern myself with. So we're going to go to Berserkers. The Berserker is the personification of unbridled aggression and fury. They are fearless opponents, especially when facing many foes at once. Berserkers stand at the forefront of battle, unleashing their devastating rage upon the enemy while keeping unwanted attention away from their allies. And then again it says it needs strength. So basically when it says keeping unwanted attention away from their allies, they're referring to the ability of taunt. Taunting is just a spell or ability that you get that tells the enemy that you're attacking to, hey, look over here, hit me instead of these other guys who are actually doing the damage to you. It may do simulated damage to the enemy so that he imagines that he's getting hit harder from you than the other guys, but it does not actually doing damage to the enemy. Or it may just be something that you have put on you from other classes that transfer their hate that they have accumulated from the damage they've done to you. So it's very important to keep that in mind. You also have the little hint right here that they are fearsome opponents, especially when facing many foes, which means they may get more area effects, and I do believe that's the case in Berserkers. I have never played one, so don't hold me to that one, but Berserkers tend to do more damage, I've seen, than Guardians. So if you want to be a tank class, but you do want to be able to do a little bit of damage, not a whole lot, Berserkers might be a way to go for you. Now, if you want to be a tank class and you want to do a significant amount of damage, monks might be the way to go, because they do quite a few very hard hits with their spells. They don't take hits quite as well as a Guardian. Guardians, in my opinion, would be the best tank in the game. Second behind Berserkers would be second to that. And monks and bruisers would fall somewhere in 4th place, in my opinion, because Shadow Knights and paladins would be tied for 3rd. So let's go ahead and read monks. The monk is a spiritual combatant who believes in the philosophy of mind over body. This mastery of physical prowess allows monks to hasten their formidable attacks, purge their bodies of ailments, move invisibly past enemies, and even fool opponents into believing them dead. And again, it says strength is their primary component for damage and power, which I disagree with. Although in monks might be more important because, again, they don't take hits as well, so concentrating more on doing damage may be a nice thing to do. They also hint towards the ability to make the enemy believe they're dead, and that's what I referred to earlier as fatigue death. It's a spell that you get, or combat art, that you can cast, and your character will literally fall to the ground as if he had just died while he's in battle. And if it works, sometimes it's not successful, but sometimes it is, especially for monks it seems to be most of the time. The enemy will believe that you have died and literally paid back to wherever you pulled him from. Now this can be a problem if you're fighting the creature where he spawned. He will think that you're dead and just stand right where you got him from. And the moment you stand back up, he'll hit you again because you're within his aggro radius. So you want to be very careful with where you do that. If you're fighting him where he spawns, you want to run away a little bit, and then fatigue death. It comes in very handy for like really nasty pulls where you're trying to pull the room, but only get a few and not the entire room. You can throw something in like a Chinese star, hit the enemy, and if you get more than you should have, just fatigue death, and the enemies will go back to where they're at. You can stand up and try again. So that is a very nice little ability to have. Again, Shadow Knights get the same thing. Not quite as nice on the Shadow Knights. I see that it works far more often for the monks. And when I say it works, I mean that you can cast the spell or combat art, and the enemy will not be fooled that you're dead. You'll be laying on the ground, you won't be attacking, you'll be getting hurt still. And you'll have to stand back up and wait for this spell to be able to be recasted for you to do it again. And then hopefully it would work that time. So in the first game, Shadow Knights had it as well, and it worked very, very rarely. In this one, it works far more often, but again, far, far more often for monks than Shadow Knights, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and go to Bruisers. Bruisers are relentless juggernauts of strength and intimidation who have transformed their bodies into vicious weapons to inflict pain and suffering upon their enemies. Masters of physical combat, Bruisers rely upon deflection and agility to avoid attacks as they brutalize their foes. And again, it says strength for their power and damage. So Bruisers are basically the same thing as monks, the same thing as Guardians and Berserkers and Shadow Knights and Paladins. They're basically the different variations upon the same theme. They do pretty much the same thing that monks do, but they will get a few different spells that kind of push them in a different direction. Like with Guardians, they're more towards soul tanking. That's all they do is really tank, and they don't do a lot of damage. Berserkers will do a little bit more damage, but they can still tank quite well. Again, with the Shadow Knights and Paladins, you got... I'll go more into that as we go through those, but with the monks and Bruisers, basically the exact same class. I do believe that Bruisers are a little bit more geared towards, DPS than monks, but monks again do insane amount of DPS as well if played just right. So let's go ahead and do Shadow Knights. Shadow Knights are malevolent crusaders who will wreak fear, hate, and despair upon all who would oppose them. In addition to their formidable martial skills, Shadow Knights conjure dark magic with which they can enhance their abilities and drain the life force of their enemies. And then it says strength for their maximum health and power. Shadow Knights get the ability to do basically a direct damage spell to the enemy, but at the same time, the damage they do to the enemy is therefore given to them in life. It's like a life-sucking spell. It drains their life, doing damage to them and giving it to you. So that's kind of a nice little thing to have. The only drawback to it is you have to be in combat to cast it. So if you're really low on life from having just fought somebody, you can't just heal yourself. Like Paladins will get a heal spell. They can heal themselves in combat, they can heal themselves out of combat, and all it takes is power. So what I've found with Shadow Knights is you may have full power and very little life, and you don't really want to start the next fight, because any fight that you're going to do around your level that you're actually going to get experience at is probably going to hurt you at least a little bit more than you're going to be able to get off of that creature from siphoning life from them. So unless you're in an area that has these little low-level creatures that just happen to be around high-level creatures that you can go over there and kill real easy and replenish your life, which never happens, then it's not really that useful of a spell in between fights. And in a fight, it's kind of nice because you can do damage to them, like I said, and replenish a little bit of your life as well. Necromancers get a far better one than Shadow Knights. Shadow Knights are more tank than Necromancer, but they are a combination of the two. Just like Paladins are a combination between a Knight and a Cleric. So we'll go ahead and look at Paladins. The epitome of honor and valor, Paladins excel in martial combat while employing divine magic to enhance their ability and strike down their enemies. By invoking both protective and healing magic, the Paladin can often survive battles that would crumble those of lesser resolve, and it says strength for power and damage. So depending on how you want to play these classes, you can follow their advice on the strength, or if you want to be more tank, I would suggest concentrating on stamina. So Paladins are a very nice class. They can solo a little bit easier than most, simply because they can heal themselves, for a great deal of life in combat and out of combat, with just using their power. With that said, Shadow Knights will do more damage, because most of their spells are geared towards like Necromancer spells, which are dots or direct damage or disease spells, where Paladins are more healing spells. So it's a toss-up depending on how you want to play. Do you want to be able to heal other players and still be able to tank and kind of heal yourself as well, or do you want to be able to do more damage in a fight but still be a pretty good tank and have the ability to fatigue death as well? So those are some things to consider. On the next episode, I'm going to go ahead and cover the Priest class, and then I'll go to Mage and Scout as well. So if you guys like these episodes, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment below, or hit me up in game.